global supply chains. So we know that this is the optimal way for our product to go from our warehouses to the supermarkets or to the wholesalers or to the end consumers, where we deliver in some countries. So we have that optimized, and we can then implement the same way of working in all 180 countries that we operate in. So that's the strength. So that is just out of the box because it's configured the same way, it's supported by the same system globally. Next slide. So this is a little bit more into how it's set up. So if we look at if we base it on the one in the middle, so what you look in the middle, the ECC, that is the core of SAP. It's combined of these different modules. So you have the FICO on the left side, that is financial, so that is your posting of your session. You have the consolidation, which is more the legal finance part. So one is the operational finance, one is legal finance part. SD, sales distribution, material management, etc., etc. So these are the core components of an ERP system or an SAP system. It's not necessarily all companies will have all these components. This is one of the biggest SAP platforms in the world, so we're utilizing basically everything that SAP has to offer. And yet some of that is outside the core, and we also utilize some of that. For example, if you take the BI block there, so that stands for business intelligence, and that is heavily integrated with the business planning and consolidation, which is kind of the financial analytics and also the budgeting model. So that's something you buy as an add-on in SAP but utilize in BAT. If you look further down, we have some of these modules also that we have bought as an addition to the existing core. The DRC stands for government regulation and compliance, which means basically we have a system that makes sure that we are in compliance with internal auditing rules, internal controls, making sure that we are in compliance with respective legislation. For example, in finance, there's a huge number of legislations. Once you are a public company that's traded on the stock, which BAT is in multiple companies, then there's a huge number of legislation efforts that you have to do, or legislation controls you have to do to make sure that to make sure that you have minimized the risk of any fraud in your financial ledger or in your financial transactions. So we keep track of that in the DRC systems, etc. So that is kind of the core. So it's both the core ERP, but we have multiple of SAP components on top of that. If you look in the lower right corner, it's not only SAP products, but we also have a bunch of additional components on top of ERP that's not necessarily SAP, but also from other vendors. So you have this SAP core, and this is something that will only grow in the future, I think. So you have this SAP core kind of holding everything together, but then you will have these add-on applications that will support your processes, your ERP processes throughout the company, and support and being fully integrated with the ERP system. Our team sits have multiple nationalities. We sit in 3 regions. So if you look at the numbers, we have about over 3,000 incidents per month. We have about 2,200 change requests a year. So that is when a market comes and say, oh, we have something that we need to change because we're doing this and this. We have a legislation change in our country. That means we have to change this. We are doing something special with our sales. We have to change this. So we are servicing the system, the Tower platform, from 3 regions in the world. So the Americas, Europe, and Asia, where we sit, and we multiple locations across the regions. If we look at the business processes, I already went through that, but a little bit: market to cash, forecast to close, procure to pay, record to report, that's financial operations. We have corporate data, we have master data management, governance, risk, compliance. So we are fully covered, and we have a full support team that covers and supports the ERP system. All that helps us with around 150,000 sales orders per day. That's 6,000 sales orders that we actually get into the system every hour. Due to our shipping, we have 4 million goods documents produced every single day in our ERP system to make sure that the right product goes out to the right customers through all the distribution channel on all the processes. Then, due to the fact that we are, or some of our products are in the tobacco industry, that gives an extra legislation. So it gives an extra amount of documents, tariff documents, tax documents, because in the companies where we have factories, they tend to tax us to produce cigarettes, because of course we know some of the byproducts of cigarette smoking, and therefore cigarette companies are taxed very heavily. That produces an additional number of documents that is handled in the ERP system. So it is a massive system that we're dealing with today. So over 25,000 customers across 205 countries in the world, and a lot of transactions in our ERP systems every single day. All right, that is kind of the overview I wanted to give. I'd hope for some questions along the way, but let's do the Q&A. If anybody has anything to ask or curious about or wanted to ask.
Perhaps they can put it in the comments as well, although I'm blind, I cannot see anything since I'm presenting.
Perhaps Eva can help us read out if there's any comments.
Yeah, that one. I'm also the invited. I think Uma over there.
Yes, I am here.
Yes, could you help?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Jürgen Basch. So you have done a very good explanations, and you have given us a clear evidential information about what is the ERP and how this ERP will be essential for the business applications, and you have explained a lot of evolutions about the SAP and so on. Really appreciate. So maybe we can open the floor for having your questions. Hi guys.
Hi
guys. Please kindly ask any questions. All right. So maybe our students, they feel more shy because.
You could type it out in a comment.
Yeah.
Anyone?
So lunchtime, it's a challenging time. Lunchtime, it's a challenging time. And on behalf of our students, so let me ask you a few questions. Can we consider the ERP system is one of the distributed system? So can we consider the ERP system is under distributed system?
What do you mean by under distributed system?
Distributed. So distributed, systems network.
Yeah, but I need your definition on that. So what do you mean by
the shareability? The shareability, yes, shareability of resources and the easy maintainability, and it will be operating by the multiple technologies. So can you consider this ERP?
As I mentioned, yes, I think it is, and it's becoming more and more. I think we have gone perhaps like if we look at a trend in companies 10, 15 years ago, they tried to implement wall-to-wall SAP. But I think the more and more we look with the digital age, and the more add-on applications we're actually seeing in the market, it's definitely a distributed system, and we will see more and more of that. I think, as I said, SAP will be the core that kind of combines all these systems in the future. But I think the overall footprint of an SAP system will diminish in the future, because we are in a digital age, and we are in this cloud platform digital age. So it's much easier to plug and play additional components onto your ERP processes in the future. So it's definitely a distributed system.
Okay, very good. So thank you. And we have some more questions. Maybe, our Ji Hao Kong, maybe you can proceed. Some of the questions our students, they have raised here.
All right, Uma, I don't know if the team raised the question in the MS Team chat, because I haven't.
Yes, MS Team chat, yes.
Yeah, because I couldn't read because I'm the visitor.
Okay,
So
okay,
that's the reason why that I want to ask you to.
okay, right.
Mm.
Yeah, let me read a question.
Yes,
How,
please.
yeah,
Thank
so
you.
one of the students asked a question is, how is your company regulated? If it is the government, do they also have a SAP system that they operate on? So how is your company regulated?
Multiple ways, I would say. So I think the biggest one hitting on day to day is probably the financial regulations, as I touched about, because BAT is in the industry where they operate. There is a heavy involvement from a tax purposes because we produce products that are heavily taxed. It's the same in all the world, like cigarettes, alcohol, etc., are heavily taxed by local companies. So we are heavily regulated in that. Actually, in certain countries where BAT operates, BAT is the single biggest tax contributor to that company, and we have an internal tax office. So with government officials sitting inside BAT offices because it's so heavily regulated. I think that's is probably the one that's most visible. But also, if you look at some of our products, not necessarily the tobacco products, but some of the other products we do, they are moving towards a pharma product line. So we have some very heavy regulated manufacturing processes. Basically, if we go back to a pharma space, so basically, it's heavily regulated because if you take a pill from any pharmaceutical manufacturer, it's heavily regulated because, of course, there has to be control what you actually put in your mouth. And the same thing goes for certain of our products within BAT. So we are quite heavily regulated, perhaps not as much as a pharma company, but very close to it. So I would give it eight out of 10 on the spectrum. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Excellent answer that Mr. Jogan you have given. Really appreciate. I believe the answers what Mr. Jogan has provided. Okay, will we move on to the next question? What is the biggest problem of current integration products from SAP? What is the biggest problem of current integration products from SAP? A very simple question.
Yeah, it's a very simple question, but a very, very, very broad answer. Oh, that is a long answer. I think if I should point one thing out. So if you have so SAP to SAP is usually very integratable. So you can build interfaces between SAP to SAP products. Traditionally, when you then start to touch with third-party products, then that's when it becomes a little bit difficult. But at the same time, SAP is such a big system that sometimes integrating and extracting certain things from SAP is quite troublesome. For example, Jiva is actually running a project right now because one of the trends we see in the world is we are not only us as a pharma company, but all companies in the world are getting audited way more since the financial crisis. The number of audits from the government to companies has increased dramatically. So and certain countries are worse than others. They come in, we want financial data from this. We want it 12 years back in time. We want it in this way. And actually extracting 12-year-old financial data in a certain way that the financial authorities or the governmental authorities asking for in this specific way in Turkey is actually not that easy because that data has been archived, of course. So Diva is actually running a project where we are trying to extract data, and we're having this add-on product to extract data in a faster, easier, and better way, because it's not always easy, because an SAP system is so complex, it's not always easy to integrate it and to build these integration platforms. In the future, I think SAP has realized that is maybe the biggest concern of SAP. So they're starting to build more of these APIs, so these standard extracting technologies to extract data and to integrate SAP with other products.
That's great. So really excellent answer. We move on to the next one. This also, I believe, it's a very simple question. Any current known disadvantages of SAP?
Well, there are several disadvantages. I think you have some very, very huge strengths of SAP. I think the most general, and you can look up anywhere on the net if you Google SAP, you will see failures of implementing SAP because it becomes so complex. It touches everything in the system. So once you implement an SAP system, it often becomes so expensive. And sometimes companies completely fail because they don't want to adapt to the new processes. Because it's a very classical thing when you roll out SAP. We're rolling out this way of doing finance because this is how we decided is the best product for BAT. Then you come to Italy. Yeah, we don't want to do it like that. We've done it like this the last 20 years, so why should we follow this? And you have that's change management effort. And sometimes that change management effort is not enough. And sometimes if you can say the end markets have too much control, don't want to comply to what headquarters saying they should comply to, then we have an issue. You have multiple examples of SAP implementation going completely wrong. The last one, like public one, I can think about was one of the biggest supermarket chains in the world, Lidl, a German chain, so huge supermarket chain across Europe. And Lidl decided to buy these new smart cash registers. Like I don't remember if it's like self-service cash registers or something like that. And they bought these smart ones. SAP, we don't have an integration for that, but Lidl bought it anyway. And they actually had to scrap the entire product. About 100 million euros it cost in product cost to actually improve that small mistake of having non-integratable cash register with your ERP system. So I think the complexity and the pure scale makes it a monster, and a monster that it's a little bit difficult to tame and to control sometimes. Meaning monster in brackets and in a good sense, because it certainly also has a value, right?
That's great. Yeah, that's great, Mr. Jogan. And our students now keep on posting some more questions, so we can proceed with another 3 more questions. Are SAP system flexible?
Yes, but it's complex. So it's extremely flexible, but it's complex to configure. And the problem sometimes with, again, these costs of having an SAP system that you can target your internal process is that it's so flexible that you configure everything instead of going with standard. So you're building your own monster because you don't go with the standard configuration. You're implementing a process within this area and saying, oh, what SAP is suggesting, that is stupid. I want to completely change this financial process. I want to do it in this order instead. And then you run into trouble when you have new systems, when you need to upgrade, when you do this, because you have configured everything. So the dependencies of your configuration is just escalating potentially, exponentially, I mean. So you see this in a pharma company, for example, where they have customized their SAP setup to fit them perfectly. That means that gives them an advantage. Once they buy a company, they can actually say, oh, these are our global processes. You are now bought by us. This is your SAP system. In 3 months, you're fully integrated and you have all the same processes as we do. Unfortunately, it costs 200 million euros whenever they need to do an upgrade of SAP because it's so complex that they need to test everything globally. So pros and cons.
That's great. Really appreciate. So thanks for the wonderful, great answer. And we still proceed to the next one. Such a large-scale system as SAP, is it managed by a dedicated team with a company?
Yes, but we have a governance structure. So basically, we have within my department is a dedicated team doing development and support. But we are not the ones suggesting how the business should operate. So it's a classical segregation of duties between the business and IT side. So basically, we have the business saying, this is the direction we're going in. This is what we need to do. Can you please help us configure the system or change the system so it supports that? And that once the request comes in from the business, that is handled in one in one department.
Okay, that's great.
So if you take the classical terminology, say plan, build, run in IT, it's half plan and full build and run within the one department.
Very good. That's great. Really appreciate. And next question could be a critical question. How long it would take for a fresh graduate IT student to learn and fully utilize the tool? As the variation of application is huge, would it cause difficulty in learning the bolts and nuts?
Well, it depends, because obviously to say that to come out and say I know everything about SAP, that is not possible because it's such a big system. So you'll have to target within modules. So Hong Xiu, for example, is a FICO specialist, means finance specialist. I think it will take, I don't know, and it's just my guess, I think it'll take you a couple of years and you will be up to a quite solid standard. You'll not be a full expert in the modules, but give it a couple of years and you will be quite knowledgeable within one or two modules of SAP. But there are over 30 modules of SAP, so imagine that at a capable level, so 2 years per module or times 30 plus modules. So you'll spend a long time if you to say you're an expert in SAP in all areas.
Mm-hmm. That's great. All right, so one more question. As you mentioned earlier, SAP will face a test of time since technology is becoming more dynamic and robust by the day. So is there any plans to adjust to these changes?
Not sure I understand the question correct. I'm saying what I'm thinking is SAP changing along with the technology change? Mm-hmm. And I would say yes, but it's a very slow journey because companies have so much money invested in this, and companies have everything set up that you can call it in economic terms, it will be the transactional cost of being up to date with current technology all the time is huge within the ERP space. So therefore, it's a very slow journey, and you don't take it as what we see in ERP is you usually don't take it in these gradual steps. It leaps at the time.
Okay, that's great. Yeah. And not least, last question. I mean, for the companies that are using SAP services, do they normally use the tool with a dedicated team?
Not sure I understand. If they use the tool with a dedicated team, is that the end users are? If that's a dedicated team, I think, if I understand the question correctly, is if there's a dedicated team that only uses SAP, or it's spread across. I would say it's spread across, but the frequency of use varies a lot. So if you take somebody that is posting financial records or doing accounting, they would sit in an SAP system like 24/7, obviously not 24/7, but like exclusively when they're sitting and working. If you are on a manufacturing plant, if you are in a warehouse, if you are in the distribution, you would work almost exclusively in SAP a lot of the time. Me, for example, I'm head of SAP. I probably access SAP 10 times a month, and that's usually to do an approval. Mm-hmm. Or to grant permission or something like that. I'm not hands in a system, even though it's my area of expertise, because my function has not really a lot to do with the internal processes and making the function work, or the company work. So I would say it's not an exclusive group, but within that group, there's a huge difference in frequency and amount of time you spend in the system.
Wow. That's excellent, Mr. Jogan. You have answered all the queries of our students. Really appreciate.
That's good. Good questions.
Yeah, that's great. Really appreciate.
Yeah. So let's wrap up here and let Hong Xiu present a little bit, so we have time for that.
Okay, let's move on, and maybe if we have time later, we can come back to some of the questions which York didn't have a chance to answer. Okay, so what's different about my part of the presentation? Yeah. So while York has hyped up everything about SAP. How good is SAP? How has SAP helped? How is SAP being implemented and used in BAT? I'm gonna move one level lower, yeah, just to bring it hopefully a bit more relatable to you. So, um, how did the SAP system help us BAT as an organization? And when I talk about us, I'm not talking about myself personally, because I'm not an actual user of the system, as what York has talked about. So I'm talking about my internal customers. Yeah. So the actual users of the systems, who may be from the finance team, who may be from the marketing team, who may be from supply chain team. Yeah. So these are the people who are heavy users of the SAP, and who are the direct people who benefit from the SAP implementation. So why would a company even start embarking on the journey of implementing SAP? Yeah, so just think about it. A lot of the things that we may take for granted, yeah, is actually very reliant on the tool or the system that the company may be using. Yeah, so if you are familiar with finance, yeah, if I'm not sure whether anyone in the audience is from with a finance background, at the operational level, you must make sure that whatever is sitting in a bank is reconciling with whatever number is showing in a system. But how automated is that process? Some companies may have still very manual processes, but some have fully automated processes. Yeah, I mean, just imagine the bank statements come from the bank, it's automatically posted into our SAP system, and the system can immediately flag out what is not reconciled. Yeah, but not every company may have the luxury of having that kind of automation. And maybe some users are facing complaints that they don't have full visibility of what are the pending orders in the system that needs to be delivered, and therefore they had to delay a shipment. So it's actually very heavily supported by a very effective system. They are supporting the business processes. So on and on. Yeah, all these problems are is heavily reliant on a good system to support you. Otherwise, the person, the human, may end up spending a lot of time doing manual work, or even having a system to record all their transactions. If the system is not good enough, they may still end up spending a lot of time, even with the system, trying to get it to work for them. Yeah. So all these are examples of problem statements, yeah, that may lead to an actual SAP implementation, yeah, which would potentially solve all of these problems. So what I will bring you through in the next slide is an example of a business process, yeah, where SAP can truly help optimize and make the process more effective. Yeah. So I'm just going to quickly run through this. Yeah. So order to cash, if any of you had any exposure to this, yeah, this business process, we are using this as an example because it's immediately, relatable to even ourselves as a consumer. Yeah, we are the one, paying the cash. Yeah, so from the point that you place an order, for example, even in Lazada, on Shopee, and you pay, yeah, the whole process takes a very short while, and this is from our perspective as a consumer. But at the back of it, there are so many processes that is supporting it. Yeah, supporting Lazada, supporting Shopee, yeah, supporting Amazon, and just imagine from their point of view, yeah, what happens at the point of you clicking the order and paying the cash until they deliver the goods to you. So there are many things happening in the background, yeah, from the point where they're capturing the order to delivering and collecting the cash efficiently, yeah. So we are, of course, we are considered cash customers. So, but for the big corporations, yeah, they may a very big part of the business process is about managing credit risk. Yeah, because most of those business transactions are on credit terms, it's not on cash terms. So whenever I have a customer who has placed a big order, so how does the company decide what is the credit term or what is the credit risk of this new customer? Yeah, so we have some, for example, in our BAT organization, we have some recent initiatives, yeah, to address this. So, for example, we are building some interfaces which is called connecting directly to the credit agencies. The credit agencies, imagine it. I think all of us have a credit score as well, which is being kept by Bank Negara. So just imagine that this business BAT is automatically connecting to the credit risk agencies and getting the information on these customers. Yeah, and because everyone officially has a credit score. So with this information, then we can decide, okay, what kind of credit term should I give this customer? Because at the end, if we don't collect the receivable, yes, it becomes a debt, and it will impact the company's performance as well. So that is just one example. Probably another example is demand forecasting. Yeah. So this one is also heavily integrated from the point that someone places an order to when they expect to get the stock. How are we able to forecast the demand precisely so that our backend at the manufacturing side, they know when they need to start manufacturing, yeah, so that they can fulfill the demand on time. Yeah, so all these are examples of how important it is to have a reliable system that can provide you with all this information so that you can make better business decisions. Okay, so we talked about credit management. Yeah, we talk about sales channels, and for marketing, we have many sources where we can collect the orders. This is from a BAT perspective. Yeah. If you talk about Lazada, of course, the only source that everyone places their order is via the Lazada app. But for BAT, it can be from various sources. Yeah. We can have a very typical example of what we call pre-sales. Yeah, pre-sales is someone who places an order upfront with maybe 1 month's lead time, and then for you to deliver the stock in bulk to them. Yeah, but of course we also have what we call the prompt sales, which is prompt as in fast, right? So the person, just imagine the salesperson, the sales representative is holding a handheld, yeah, a handheld device, goes to the store, places the order after talking to the customer. Yeah, the customer may be a store, yes. Placing the order, they key it in their system, and immediately it interfaces back to SAP. SAP recognizes it and then issues what York has mentioned before, maybe a goods issue document, and the sales rep immediately takes the stock from the van and give it to the customer, which is the store. Yeah, so all this probably happens in a span of, I don't know, 5 to 10 minutes. And you can imagine the whole transactions is already recorded in the handheld, interface into SAP, and from SAP going back to the handheld, and then the sales is already recorded, yeah, in a matter of a few minutes. So this is another example of how an important and effective system setup can truly help the business to improve their business process. Yeah. So this is about specifically order to cash. We pick this as an example because there are so many other processes which may not be too relatable to you, but I think as a consumer, this is something that we can relate to the most. Yeah, of course, we have many other things like supply chain. Yeah, those are, for example, at the factory that is actually producing the goods, right? The finished goods. How do so an example would be when when the factory receives the demand, yeah, the demand on how much they need to produce, and the system will automatically propose based on what is available, yeah, in the stock. It will automatically propose, okay, in order for you to fulfill this demand at this particular date, you need to purchase this much of raw materials for because your stock is running low in certain raw materials, and this is what you need to purchase. And the system is able to smartly enough propose what you need to buy, when do you need to buy it, and even generate the purchase order automatically. Yeah, so SAP, when implemented properly, yeah, as what York mentioned, there can be failures as well. So when implemented properly, can truly make all these processes very effective and seamless. So someone asked the question, how long does it take, yeah, to typically, yeah, to implement the SAP solution? So because of the complexity, so it's not something that you can do in a very short time. And to give you probably some context around it, when I first joined BAT, the TAO project which York mentioned just started, yeah. And by the time the whole TAO project ended, I have had 2 children. So, so maybe that gives you some idea of how long actually a project can take. Of course, it's not an average or a standard. Yeah, it would take 5 years, for example. But just that for BAT, because it was truly a global solution that was being rolled out, yeah, starting from Asia Pac and then I think ending at South America, yeah, Brazil, maybe, I think, yeah, Jiwa maybe may remember. So because it was a global rollout and we went by stages, so it actually went through almost a 5 to 6 years project before it finally ended. And just imagine with this kind of complexity, this kind of scope, and the complexity of the solution, you also need a very but I put here the SWAT team. Yeah, it is also very crucial to have the right people in the team to implement this big scale project. So what I'm describing to you in the next few slides is a representation of how a project team can look like. However, depending on the scale of the project, it may or may not look like that. Yeah. Perhaps in a smaller scale project, one person may combine, take in multiple roles. But in the next few slides, we have a very, I guess, the roles are quite distinct. We play very specific roles, but maybe in other organizations or smaller scale projects, it's more of a compressed. Yeah, one person plays and wears many hats and plays many roles. So with the next few slides, I was hoping that it will give you some insight on what are the career prospects when it comes to SAP. Because when I was in my last year of uni, as I mentioned before, I had no idea. I didn't have a chance to even study, have an introduction to SAP. I had no idea what are the career prospects. So I guess I was lucky enough to get into SAP in my first job with Accenture, and 15 plus years later, I'm still doing SAP. I guess I did quite like it, so that's why I'm still doing it. Okay, so this is typically what would make up an SAP team. Yeah, it can be it can be an internal team like what we are with York. Yeah, this is what we call internal. We are not the vendor. We support in our internal users, internal business, but this can also be applicable to the vendor. Yeah, so when you are the vendor, you do not belong to the company, of course, yeah, that you're implementing the SAP project for. But you can also have these roles as well, wearing the consulting vendor hat. So just bear in mind, yeah. So of course, the project manager, and I think this is self-explanatory, and I hope you can see it clearly because I just realized on my screen the white font is blending with the gray background. So the project manager is of course the one that keeps everything together, because, and it's especially important in the SAP world, yeah, because I think if you remember from the slide that York showed, there are so many boxes in the SAP system even, and I myself is only an expert in finance, yeah. Whereas I have many other counterparts in marketing, in operations, in data management. So the project manager is typically the one that keeps everyone together and makes everyone talk to each other. So the solution architect. Okay, sorry. So just before we move on to solution architect, going back to the project manager. So does the project manager need to know about SAP? I would say if you are doing an SAP implementation, preferably yes. Yeah, you need to know about SAP. And I think from what I have personally experienced, most of the project managers I worked with came from, one of the uh, modules in SAP that they are one of the experts in those areas before they move on to become a project manager. So preferably yes, yeah, you need to know about SAP. So what about the solution architect? So the solution architect will be, the techie guy, yeah, the techie guy that designs the entire system landscape. Yeah, we need the middleware, we need the database, we need the application, we need the add-on. So I'm not someone who is able to play this role, yeah. But this person will need to be the one to understand high level what is the business requirement and design the system landscape. Okay, the solution designer. So this is me. Yeah. So maybe I will be a bit biased and spend more time on talking about this. So this is the person who will talk to the business users and design the solution, yeah, to address their problem. So this will cut across multiple areas. Yeah. We will have solution designers sitting in finance, marketing, operations, master data. So this will cut across multiple areas. And normally this person cannot be the person that talks only technical jargon, yeah, because this person needs to talk to the users. And for myself personally, even though I am an expert in the finance module of SAP, I actually do not have any finance background. Yeah, I mentioned I have a computer science degree, but I do not have a finance background. So do you need to have a finance background? Do you need to have a supply chain background in order to be an SAP consultant in that specific area? The answer is no, with myself as a living example. But of course, the learning curve is steep, yeah, for you to overcome that gap, that knowledge gap, because how do you design a solution when you don't even know the process? Yeah. So for me, it came with a steep learning curve, but I would say that it's not something that is a must have. Yeah. So. And I think I just wanted to address, and also we are running out of time. So I also wanted to address that question that someone asked: how long does it take before you become an actual expert? Yeah. So myself, personal experience, I didn't go for any official SAP training or certification. Yeah. Some were official, mostly unofficial learning on the job from my seniors. So and it also depends on the experience and the exposure that you manage to have. You tend to learn a bit more in a project implementation as compared to a support organization. So I would say you should be able to be at a junior level by 3 years, and maybe a senior level. And also this depends on you yourself as a person, yeah, how fast you learn, by 5 to 7 years. Yeah. So if that gives you an idea, yeah, of how long it takes to actually master one or two big modules in SAP. Okay, the solution developers. So this is the geek. Okay, maybe not the geek. So this is like there are two individuals or two categories to this. One part of it will be the person who does the coding. Yeah, so they need to know how to write the code, and this is when SAP solution is not out of the box, and you need to do some customization. So this will be dependent on the developers who write the code. Yeah, we also have another side of it, which is the person who does the configuration. So for myself, even though I'm a designer, I don't do the configuration anymore, but I do know how to do it. Yeah. So I guess I know a bit of both the roles of a designer and a developer. Yeah, but the developer typically will not be doing the front facing. Yeah, the designers will be the one doing the front facing, doing the talking with the users, and the developers will be the one at the back supporting the designers. Yep. Just quickly, this is my last slide. And we also have the data expert. So maybe this is a bit more specific to SAP because data can break an SAP implementation. Yeah, if it is rubbish. Yeah, so data is a very integral part of SAP, and we have a group of people in York's team just looking after data. Yeah. So that just shows how important it is. And the performance engineer perhaps is something also a bit more specific to BAT because we are such a global instance. If let's say the system is slow or the system actually goes down because of it's overloaded, it is a big thing to us. Yeah, so that's why we also have a team, which is Jiwa's team. Yeah, who is responsible to take care of the performance well-being of the system. So this also is a bit of a techie person. Yeah, because anything related to performance can be the code, can be the architecture of the system, it can be many things. Okay, the deployment manager. So this is also very important to BAT because we are one global instance, yeah. And just to plan to deploy a solution, a big one, a small one, a medium-sized one, goes through a lot of planning by the deployment manager, because the person we have to know when is the best timing to release certain changes to production is also the one who has to make sure that all the governance is checked in the in the checklist because as you know we are also we are apart from being heavily regulated, we are also need to be SOX compliant. So the deployment manager would have to take care of all that. Does the deployment manager need to know SAP? Not necessarily. Yeah, the person probably has to be a bit more well versed in controls. But knowing some SAP is a good to have. And finally, testing. So we also have a team in York's organization just focusing on testing, and that also shows how important is testing. Yeah, because every change that is introduced into the system has to be rigorously tested, yeah, as part of user acceptance tests, and also rigorously regression tested to make sure that we don't introduce something that will break the system. Yeah. So does this person need to know SAP? Yes and no as well. Although it's good to know, it's good to know some knowledge of SAP because you are driving the testing for an SAP system at the end of the day. So out of these 8 roles that I've introduced, I would say the person that needs to have a very strong SAP knowledge would be the solution designers, the solution developers, the project manager. These 3 needs to have a very, very strong knowledge of SAP. The rest, the data experts as well. Yeah, the rest maybe play more of they are supporting the function. They are very important as well, but because they are not involved in the integral part of the SAP design, therefore they may not need to have a very strong knowledge of SAP. And that brings me to the end of the presentation. And I think we are left only with 3 minutes. Sorry. I'm not sure if we are able to overrun. So do we open up for Q&A now, or do we
Yes,
immediately
please.
jump to... Ah, we do? Okay. Okay.
Yes, please. Yes, really appreciate Miss
Hong
Hong Sik
Siu.
Sim. Yeah,
Yes.
Hong Sik Sim. Really appreciate you have been sharing your 15 years of experience in the ERP systems implementation, and you have explained very clearly the team, the data experts, the performance engineer, the role of yours, and I would like to highlight here the way how you have explained about your role, which is called a solution designer, right? Really
Mhm.
appreciate. it's,
Okay.
it's a challenging task, am I right? It's a challenging year. Very good. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
yeah, you have shared a very detailed information about how do we bring the solutions to the ERP. It is not to simply provide the solutions by only one day. All right. So even you have shared about some examples of Lazada, and also you have shown the SWAT team and so on. Really appreciate. Maybe now we can open the floor to have some questions. Guys, feel free, and you are allowed to ask the questions, and maybe you can type the questions in our chat. All right. So one of our yes. So one of our lecturer. So she has posted a question. Customer will directly make a payment to the bank account of the company. Is the transaction directly detected by the SAP system once the payment is made?
I think this depends on the design, although I wouldn't say it is typically it's not instantaneous. Yeah, it's not instantaneous. We If it is a direct to the bank, then SAP will typically get the transaction when we have an interface from the bank into the system. So depending on how frequent is that interface, how do you set up the interface, it would typically not be real time or instantaneous.
That's great. And the next question, does SAP create more jobs or do the opposite?
Uh, I think there are two sides to this question. It probably creates job to the IT industry. Yeah. But maybe, yeah, to be truthful to the business, because SAP is able to put so much structure and automate so many of the processes that it makes the business process so much more effective and seamless and less, requiring less human intervention. So it is possible that, from the business perspective, having an SAP implementation may mean losing jobs.
That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. Mm.
So excellent answer you have provided. Really appreciate. And one more question. And we have still two more questions. So let me ask one question. Do you think the system can replace services provided by third-party audit firms?
I wouldn't say it's directly replacing. Um, but I think certain certain processes which used to be manually audited can be replaced because the process is automated by the system. Yeah, so that's one part of it. The other part of it perhaps is, we we have audit reports which may be automatically generated from the system, and I think York also touched on this from York also touched on this, that we had this implementation driven by GUA's team, whereby we are able to automatically get the information out from the system to send it over to the legal authorities that are doing some, ad hoc audit. So perhaps instead of employing a third party, audit firm to do it for you, you can actually, get that automation done via SAP.
Wow, that's great. The next question is, while looking for a new member to join the team, would you prefer an intern that go through all job roles or hire a specialist in a specific SAP module?
This is a trick question.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, to be truthful, it depends on the team dynamics. It depends on the team dynamics which I have at that time. Currently, I have 6 person reporting to me. Yeah. And because we cover so many different processes in the finance module. So if you ask me, if I already have, quite a few of senior members in my team, I will consider hiring someone who is very new, just to bring in some new blood, new perspective into the team, new energy into the team. However, of course, I can't have everyone new in my team as well, yeah. So I don't think there is any fixed answer to that question, but I'm definitely open to hiring someone very new in the team.
Okay, that's
and I would not give her a budget to have only high specialist roles. So there needs to be a mix between the job grades. Because we are one thing is the salary implication of having highly skilled specialists, but there's also we need kind of a mix between the different job grades in a department. So you need to have some sort of homogeneous mass, like between young and old and experienced and not so experienced.
That's good. Really appreciate our BAT for the wonderful opportunities that you will be opening for all our students. Yeah, really appreciate. Yeah. And one more question is it's a realistic question. So what is your fresh graduate experience when started learning ERP and SAP? And how different is now and then 15 years ago for the system?
There are 2 parts to the question,
Yeah.
So from a personal experience, I had 0 exposure to SAP when I first took on my SAP assignment. So perhaps that was because I was with Accenture, the consulting company. So I was part of their fresh graduate program. So even though I was assigned to my SAP project with zero SAP knowledge, however, I'm shadowing a senior. Yeah, so the senior is the one who brings me, along with him and her or whoever she goes, and I learn from the seniors. Yeah, of course, you have to be very careful interacting with the clients because you can't really openly expose that you know nothing about SAP. Then they will be thinking, why am I hiring you and paying you so much to implement this project from me? But yeah, just to share, I had 0 experience with SAP when I first got my job with Accenture and with an SAP project. Yeah. What was the second part of the question again?
And how difference is now and then 15 years ago for this system?
To be honest, we had some new and exciting stuff introduced by SAP, but I would say it didn't change drastically. Of course, we are not on S4HANA yet. So maybe when S4HANA comes along to BAT, then especially for finance, it's quite a drastic change. But for everything else, I would say that I do not feel that there was a very drastic or a lot of changes in the SAP core design itself. Yeah. So what I learned, what I started with 15 years ago, is still very core to what I'm doing now, 15 years later.
Okay, that's great. Really appreciate. Okay, guys. So still, if you have any questions, you can feel post here, and our guest lecturers are here to provide you very valuable answers.
Let's do the Mentimeter, and then
let's do that.
Yeah.
Waiting.
Yeah. So students, please scan the Mentimeter and then share your feedback. How the session was good. And putting the one word is okay. And also, if you are like the numbers, you can also put the numbers. Scale of number is 10 to 10. So feel free to put your wording. And while you are scanning and wording, just a few comments from my side. It's an amazing session for today. It's a lot of interactions between the lecturers and also students. And not only for number of questions a lot, but also the quality of question is quite amazing. So who said that students are shy? It's not at all. So it's quite amazing. We covered today for regarding the SAP from the end to end. What is the platform is it? How companies are using, and also what kind of job opportunity and career opportunities that we have in the company. So hope it helps you while that you are considering about the future careers, and also many of you are considering to plan for SAP for your future. Yeah. Oh, okay. Norse, you have a. Arifin, how I call you? Yeah.
Hi, hello everyone.
Hi.
Okay, I actually one of the lecturers who are teaching my accounting student. Okay, teaching integrated business processes with SAP ERP in Asia Pacific University. Okay, I experienced in teaching more than 200 students. Okay, since 2017. Okay, but what I want to suggest is that yes, they feel it very complex. Okay, we really teach them in terms of recording on how the system is integrated. Actually, I just want to let you all know the good exposure is like what Miss Huang shared is really real. Okay, it's real. It is something that I also get a good feedback from my student as well. I'm more on sharing my experience in teaching them. Yes, they can feel the complexity of this system actually. Okay, I just want to say that very good sharing from all of you. Thank you so much for sharing your own real cases here for our students to learn more about SAP. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks for
Thank you for the feedback.
Yeah, great. All right. So the students, your feedbacks. All right, great, insightful, and also helpful, interesting, amazing, open. The session. All right, good. Very good.
Slightly confusing. Okay. All right.
Okay, let us think about what we make them more confused about.
Yeah.
Later session.
Probably too much information in 1.5 hours.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
And also realistic. Yeah. Good. Very good. Thanks. Thanks a lot. Let me hand it over to Uma for closing the sessions.
Yes. Okay, so thank you so much for our batch. So today we had a wonderful session on improving business processes and the experience with the SAP ERP. And we had a wonderful, the guest lecturer who is Mr. Jogan Bach, is the head of Enterprise Platform COE. And also the another guest lecturer was the Hung Siv Sim, Senior Designer, the Finance and Treasury Enterprise Platform COE. I really appreciate, and also our Miss. So we are frequently seeing her, our Ji Ha Kang. Yes. So we really thank you on behalf of our APU and also our APU lecturers and also our innovative students. So once again, we thank you, and we are welcoming again to have some more guest lecturing series in the following